I used to talk to the gnomes that lived in my backyard, and I think they may have responded. Kids are kind of mean. There were plenty that I knew that were mean anyway. It took years before they stopped teasing me for believing in gnomes. In my defense, my parents should have intervened earlier, but my mom thought it was cute. She saved all the little crafts and notes I'd made. Our backyard was full of little clay houses I'd made when my mom took me to meet my dad for dinner on Thursdays. Thursdays were my favorite because that was the day my dad threw pots at a studio by this sandwich shop. My mom would take me there earlier than my dad's class was done, and I'd get a little bit of clay from the instructor who was good friends with both of my parents. And no matter what was suggested to me, I'd make a tiny little house to give to the gnomes. Though my mom thought it was cute, my dad was a little weirder about it. Not mad, really, just weird. He was the one who told me about the gnomes. He didn't think it was cute, but he also didn't discourage it. I'd tell him about something I made for the gnomes. Sometimes it was a basket I wove for them, sometimes a painting, or little bit of honey my friend from down the street helped her aunt harvest directly from a beehive. That one was special because I knew the gnomes would love it most of all. And all my dad would say in response was, "Be careful." He'd say it with this look on his face. Anyway, I always promised I would. It started the summer when he told me about them. Anyway, it was bedtime, and I asked for a story. He smiled and said he had a story he was waiting to tell me, but he wanted to make sure I was ready for it. Curiosity was fully in place at that point, and I of course overzealously assured him I most definitely was a big enough boy to hear such a tale. Alright. Have you ever heard the pitter-patter of little feet in the kitchen early in the morning? I shook my head no. Have you ever lost something? You put something somewhere and when you looked it wasn't there? I thought for a moment and nodded that yes, I had experienced such an event once or twice. Sometimes it is just you losing something, but other times it's the gnomes. They are little people, as tiny as your thumb, and they live just out of sight, in small settlements beneath the house, or in the branches of trees just out of reach. They mean you no harm, so long as you don't harm one of them, or one who has curried their favor. My face must have looked quizzical. Someone who the gnomes like. They protect them too, and I think they took a liking to you when you were little. He told me that when I was too young to remember I got sick, really sick. My dad wasn't sure if I was going to get better. My mom was sure I wasn't. He said it was a hard time and he and mom were crying a lot. And he had remembered from his childhood when his dad told him of the gnomes. His dad told him of a little ritual you can do. You can bring the gnomes something and ask them for a favor. And my dad in desperation went outside in the middle of the night with a very fine brandy as he always told it, crying all night in the backyard holding a sealed bottle of booze and begging the gnomes to protect me. Well, when he woke the next morning he was thoroughly embarrassed, and chalked the whole episode up to a lack of sleep and the stress of dealing with my health. At this point it should be obvious that when he checked on me, I seemed to have improved. Not a complete recovery all at once, but over the next few weeks I did recover fully and wholly. So, of course I felt like the gnomes were my personal protectors from then on, and it did make me a lot more fearless out in the woods and traipsing around my backyard. However, when I got older and was in school, I found that my gnome friends were not quite so protective. My mum thought that perhaps it was time to recognize they were a fairy tale and hoped I wasn't too disappointed. But the truth was I didn't stop believing. I felt a tad disappointed, for sure. But I understood. They'd already done a lot for me already. I still like to visit them outside, in the little homes I built for them. I'd stand outside and talk very quietly towards them. I'd tell them about my troubles, about the kids making fun of me. I told them about this one kid. He was very cruel. There wasn't a day that I didn't run into him that didn't also have me nursing a new injury or two. He had this cheap chain necklace he wore around his neck and would take off and whip me with it. I'd bring the gnomes little bits of my snacks or leftovers from my lunch during the day, not to ask them any favors, just because it felt polite if they were to listen to my troubles. Now, and I'm not proud of this, but when I heard that this bully had disappeared, I was sure it was my gnomes. I was sure they took him away somewhere and got rid of him. But above all that, I was sure that I was relieved, grateful even, and for weeks they searched for him. Posters all over the town, and news updates on the local news, and I was starting to get less relieved, more guilty. I had just resolved to tell my father of my crime by clearly inspiring the gnomes to take out my bully. That is, until they found my bully's body, at which point local news and authorities filled in the gaps about the abduction and murder of the neighborhood bully. As I was young, I didn't get too many of the details myself, just saw more neighbors walking the streets in groups more often and was told to never wander around on my own. It started making me feel silly that I had thought it was my gnome, and guilty for being glad that he was gone. I really forgot the whole thing until I was visiting my hometown recently. My mom passed away several years ago and my dad was finally ready to move someplace smaller. So, I came to help, and of course there were boxes of old things. Among them, some of the little pottery homes I'd made for the gnomes. Little notes I'd written in big blocky letters to the gnomes, saying hello, asking to meet them, that sort of thing. It was all so cute and silly. Little kid trinkets. Everything I remembered making. Sculpting with my hands. Writing in blotchy markers. Then I heard a sound. A small clinking from deep in the closed playhouse that sat for many years in my backyard. No amount of finagling could get it to come out of the open windows or doors, but I saw it. Something that made my blood run cold. I tried to tell myself it was ridiculous. Curiosity would not stop distracting me, and eventually I smashed the little clay house on the ground and pushed the pieces aside. In the broken chips of pottery was the rusty metal chain of my childhood bully. Couldn't stop myself at that point, and I took out my phone and searched up the details of the case. Details I never was told as a child and had never been curious about as an adult. And after reading them, even though I know how ridiculous it sounds, I can't shake the feeling that it really was the gnomes. I don't want to get too explicit here, because the details are not for the faint of heart, but there is a connection, multiple connections really, most of them superficial, being found buried up to the neck in clay. The exact mineral, clay used at that pottery studio, a different mineral composition than any clay they found nearby. The way he was covered by thick layers of woven reeds just like the baskets I'd woven the gnomes. How someone painted a frowny face on the reeds, and worst of all, how they found his mouth and nose stuffed with honey, bees still twitching in the honey they found in his lungs. I threw up. I kid you not, I puked right there. The realization hit me hard. Not only did this paint my childhood obsession in a dark light, not only did it give me a full return of guilt, but the worst feeling was wondering if the gnomes were still out there, and whether they still liked me. Did I still have their favor? Should I see if they can help me with others, or are they something I shouldn't meddle with? Time will tell. I've decided not to have my dad move out of my childhood home. I've come back instead, spending afternoons sharing snacks in the backyard, and telling them about my troubles, and the people who caused them. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and giving it a thumbs up. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think or what you'd like to see next. Don't forget to check out my other videos for more content like this. Exciting new content is coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, stay awesome.